Have you ever heard the expression that the mind is a terrible thing to waste? I'm sure you have. Indeed it is. You know, that might be the biggest understatement of all time. The biggest understatement of all time. Why do I say that? You see, the mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. It has the ability to create. You see, the tree can only be a tree. It can never get out of its nature of being a tree. An apple tree can never become an orange tree. An orange tree can never become bananas. It has to stay within that nature. So it can never create anything other than itself, right? But the mind can create. You see, the tree can never create a car. The tree can never go to school. It has locked into its identity as a tree everything it needs to be a tree and survive and thrive as a tree. So it can never create anything other than itself. But the human mind, even though it can't create itself, it can create other things outside of itself that nothing else and no one else and nothing else in nature can do. You see, the elephant doesn't go to school. Well, maybe they go to elephant school through their mother, right? They learn through their mother, so that's a form of schooling, right? But the elephant can never create. You see, so school has nothing to do with intellectual capacity. It really doesn't. You see, because Henry Ford, the guy who's credited with creating the car, which he didn't create the car, just created the mass production of cars. He had what, 3rd, 4th grade education? So intellectual capacity has nothing to do with formal education. So why am I saying all this? Where am I going with this? The mind indeed is a terrible thing to waste. So when the colonizers came to Africa, they studied the anthropology of the African. And this is how they controlled the African. And this is how they continue to control the African to this day. Because they used their minds to figure out how to control the African. And so now the African is in a perpetual state of mental slavery. So is the African American. But guess what? So is the Europeans. So is the Asians. The majority of the world is in a perpetual state of mental slavery. Because somebody else's mind has control over your mind. That's how powerful the mind is. But you can take control, you can take back control of your own mind. How do we do this? Well, first of all, you have to understand that you're in a state of mental slavery. Once you come to that realization and that conclusion, then you can start doing the things that's necessary to alleviate the mental slavery. You see, when you're sick, if you don't know what kind of sickness that you have, you can't cure yourself. So when you go to the doctor and they ask you, well, what's hurting you? You're going to tell them where it's at, what it's feeling like. Then they have an idea of what the problem may be, and they can start diagnosing from that particular standpoint. But the African is so sick, so mentally enslaved, that they don't even know they're enslaved. They're just going about life every day as if everything's okay. They don't know that they are being mentally enslaved. And some are aware that they're being mentally enslaved, but they don't know how to free themselves mentally, right? So when we go back to our ancestral history and we study the ancient Kemites, we can start getting an understanding of just how powerful they were mentally, spiritually. That is a connection that we can use to free ourselves of this mental slavery. That's just one aspect of it. But this is a great place for us to start as Africans and as African Americans. We have to tap into our history, our ancestral history. And we got to go back further than 2,000 years when this so-called guy named Jesus Christ walked the planet. You got to go back further than that. Africans were doing things on the planet thousands of years before 2,000 years ago when Jesus supposedly had walked the planet. So if that's where your starting point is from, this is what keeps you mentally enslaved. Let's go back to our ancestral history. How far back? As far back as you can go. As far back as you know. But the history is there. The literature is there. You should start with the Medu Neter. Some people call it the Medu Neter. That's kind of a slang. It's Medu Neter. The beginning, as we know it, as Africans. When you go back to that history, when you go back to that starting point, and you move forward, then you understand who you really are. Then you understand that there's nothing in the world that can enslave you except for your own mind. And there's nothing in the world that can bring you out of slavery except for your own mind. You have the mental capacity to free yourself. Study. If you just ask the question, listen to this. If you just ask the question to yourself and to the universe, show me how I can free myself mentally. You see, your words have vibration. Whatever you put out comes back. The universe hears you all the time because you are the universe. The universe cannot not hear you. So if you ask the question, how do I free myself? You'll start to get some answers. You'll start to get some inclinations inside that'll lead you to this particular document or this particular book or this particular person. So if you ask the question, you get answers. So how do I free myself? I'm encouraging you to do your own research. Don't take my word for it, because whatever I say could be taken as Jamal tripping, Jamal's a quack or whatever, right? Do your own research. The history is out there. I would suggest that you study ancient African history. There are some wonderful authors out there. Sheikh Anta Diop. Study him. Study him. Very, very powerful African that has tremendous works. Go research some of his books. That's where you should start. I'll suggest that. Sheikh Anta Diop. Start there. So you can start to formulate a plan to reclaim your own mind and live freely, whether you're on the continent of Africa, whether you're in the US, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Canada. You can live freely because your mind is free. That's the only thing that matters, is freedom of the mind, because then you're in control of your own life. So that's just a little food for thought. Quit wasting this precious, precious, valuable, the most valuable tool on the planet is your own mind. Use it wisely. And with that, my friends, I'm out. Peace and love.